it gives me great pleasure to introduce Braden Kelley for this Thought Leader session. He's a leading global innovator, author, change maker, and the Director of Innovation and Human-Centric Problem Solving at Oracle Fuel. Braden is the author of 2 books on charting change, as well as stoking your innovation bonfire. He's a speaker, training facilitator, advisor, and a great influencer in our global innovation community. So I'm looking forward to a very exciting session where Braden will provide his insights on picking a problem worth solving. So welcome, Braden.
Thank you, Karina. And hello, everybody. Good morning. And thank you for joining the session. So I'll go ahead and jump right in so that we stay on schedule. So real quickly, I've written a couple books, as Karina mentioned, and I've also created something called the Change Planning Toolkit to help people accelerate their change planning efforts and make sure that they can literally get everybody on the same page for change. And as Karina also mentioned, in my full-time job is working for Oracle in a group called Fuel, which helps companies solve wicked problems in their business. So let's jump right into the topic, which is picking a problem worth solving from a sea of problems. So there's lots of problems that we could solve in an organization, and oftentimes the gap that we have is not in finding a problem to solve, but choosing the right problem to solve. And so we have to ask ourselves a lot of different questions to get to that problem that's really going to make the most meaningful impact on the business. And often it's really easy to jump in and just start solving the problem that's right in front of us. And so, you may have heard a lot of organizations talk about the problem is not coming up with ideas, but oftentimes there's plenty of ideas. It's coming up with ideas that matter. And if you go down the wrong path, oftentimes you'll end up in the wrong place. It's too easy to begin a journey. It's too easy to also end up in the wrong place. So we have to be really careful about choosing the right problem to solve. And as we jump into trying to address problems that we might be trying to solve, oftentimes people want to jump to solutions. And so the key as you go through your innovation process, or as you go through your design thinking process, or as you go through your creative problem solving process, is that you keep people from jumping ahead to solutions. And as we look at solutions, oftentimes we look at the problem and we assume that there's going to be one right way to get to a solution. And so we start it going into the maze and we go through and try to find the one path that's not full of dead ends to get out the other side of the maze. But depending on how you look at the problem, you can get to lots of different solutions and lots of different approaches. And so the way that you ask the question often determines the answers that you get. So it's something to definitely keep in mind and something that we're going to dive into today. And so as we look at problems, one of the most problem solving, one of the most important things to always keep in mind is how you frame the problem. And so early on, as you go into your innovation process and you start looking for the question that you're going to answer, it's very important to look for lots of questions and then try to get to the right question before you begin. And that's all about framing the problem so that you end up with your feet, all of the feet in the group pointed in the right direction and moving steadily towards something that's going to mean something for the business. So some of you may have heard of the slow elevator problem, but for those of you who haven't, we're going to jump into that as our first example today. So a lot of us get frustrated sitting there, standing there, waiting for the elevator. And so a very typical, very engineering-focused type solution, a very innovation program type solution to the slow elevator problem is obviously trying to make the elevator faster by installing a faster lift, by upgrading the motor, by improving the algorithm to arrive the elevator at the proper floor at the proper time. These are typically the way that people try to address the problem, because that's how it's stated, is that the elevator is too slow. And so it used to be that the Burj Dubai had the fastest elevator at something like 26 miles an hour. But recently, Mitsubishi has been working on an elevator that can go 40 miles an hour and uses capsule type pods to fly up into the sky to take people to their destination. But if you reframe the problem, this slow elevator problem, you can end up in a much different place in terms of how you solve the problem. And so one way to do this, or one approach to doing this, is to take that problem of the elevator too slow and then examine it and look at what people are thinking, what they're feeling, what they're doing, and look at different ways that you could reframe that problem to potentially solve it in a different way by looking at it in a different way. And you could even go even further and use something like the empathy canvas from Dave Gray to look at the problem in a lot of different ways in terms of how the people who are actually having the problem are experiencing that problem. And so if we use the reframing technique and we look back at the slow elevator problem, then you see that we can go from the elevator is too slow to, wow, this wait is annoying. And so you can make it feel less slow to a person. So you can change that perception of that event that people are having by making the wait more enjoyable. You know, put up some mirrors, play some music, install a hand sanitizer station. You can really get to that place of making the experience more enjoyable. And there was an article in Harvard Business Review by Thomas Weddelsberg that introduced the slow elevator problem. So if you look at framing and reframing, and for those of you who are using something like the design thinking process or approach or mindset, the framing comes right before your empathize phase or your understand phase, and the reframing comes as you try to define the problem before you start ideating. So the key is that anytime you are trying to solve a problem, you have to give it some sort of shape before you can start addressing it. But before you really dive deep into having people go into solutioning, you want to take another look at it based on your research and see if that initial framing still stands up, or if there's a better way to look at the problem or a different problem to look at in order to create the benefits for the customers that you're trying to create. And once you get everybody lined up in all the right places and their feet pointed in all the right directions, then you're ready to accelerate your solutioning phase. So Charles Kettering once said that a problem well defined is a problem half solved. And so that's something really important to remember. It's not just how you solve the problem, it's more importantly is how you define it. And so as you prepare to solve the problem, you want to prepare to solve the right problem. And so some of you may have seen or be using a double diamond process in your innovation process, but you can also use a double diamond process in your problem solving process. And by focusing on problem finding first as you diverge, and then problem prioritization as you converge, and then once you've picked your problem, diverging again by diving deep into all the different aspects of your problem, and then converging again as you craft your research brief for going into your empathize phase in a design thinking type process to uncover all of the human elements to the problem and also the other elements to the problem, whether those are technology or otherwise. Okay, so as you're problem finding, there's a series of questions that I would encourage you to ask. And the first group is all about context. So first question is, what's the area that you want to explore? What is the part of the business? What's the part of the customer journey? What's the problem space that you're looking to explore? You want to define that, and then go broader and look at who is involved in that area. What are the outcomes that people are trying to achieve in that area? And you're really trying to broaden your mind at this point and look at other aspects, like also the tools and how are they're getting the job done. And then looking at the actions and interactions between people in this area. So really going broad, you're really defining the context that you're solving the problem in. And then what you want to do is to identify all of the challenges and problems that people are facing in this area. So going beyond just the one that you might have come into this with, you're really trying to look at the area that you're exploring and go broad and identify all the potential problems that you could solve. And then also all of the opportunities for improvement and innovation in this area. And, as a shortcut, I have created a canvas for answering these questions, and it's not up there yet, but look for that very soon. Because what you can do is then take all those sticky notes that you've come up with for all the potential problems that you want to solve, and then create a prioritization canvas. Or here's one from Michael Skok that I think is very useful around helping you pick the problem to solve. And you'll see that there's two axes there. On the left, or the vertical axis, you have latent versus blatant. And really, you want to make sure that you're solving a problem that people acknowledge. If people don't acknowledge that this is a problem, which is that lower quadrant, the latent quadrant, then it's going to be much harder to move them out of the inertia, to move them into motion. And then you have the other axis, which is the critical axis that you're trying to get to. You want to make sure that the problem matters. So you're looking for those problems that both people acknowledge, but are also going to make a meaningful impact to the business or the constituents that you're trying to serve. And so you're looking for problems that are urgent, that are unworkable, that have real consequences for the business, that you can't keep using the status quo. And then you want to make sure that they're problems that absolutely need a solution, and that there's not a solution for currently underserved type problems. And so you're looking at pains and gains, and you're looking to tip that inertia point to help people go from not doing anything and just accepting the status quo to taking action. And so once you find the right problem, then you dig deep into all the different aspects of the problem, and then it's really going to be all about looking at those human elements of the problem and really empathizing with people to understand why this is a problem for people and what the impact is to the humans in the problem. Because technology by itself, if there's technology involved, will not solve the problem. People always have to be considered. And then also, do all your research around, from research studies, external third-party studies, but also some primary research as well to gather information to go with those human insights. And then, look at it again to make sure that whether you need to reframe it or not, do your solutioning, come up with all the ideas that you can around solving that problem that's going to mean something. Do your prototyping and testing, and then take it live. Go for it. Go kick some ass and make it happen for your business or for your government or for your nonprofit that you're and help those constituents with your new solution. So that's what I have for you today in this short time to help you think about how to find a problem worth solving in a sea of problems. And here's how to get a hold of me. And I was told that we had 20 minutes and 10 minutes for questions, and it was my fault for being a little late. Some technology issues. So I'd really love to open it up for questions.
You're on mute, Karina.
Thanks, Braden. Sorry about that. I was on mute. Thanks again for great insights. We already have some questions for you. And one is a simple question. Do we need to innovate only if there's a problem?
No, I would say that any business, any organization, their number one goal is to serve the people that trust them as well as possible. So you should always be looking for new ways to serve them. So if you're a government, that could be always looking for new ways to deliver value to the constituents that you may not be currently doing, or improving your systems to be more efficient. And if you're a company, obviously it may be looking for new products or services or game-changing changes to those products or services. So I think you should always be looking to innovate, because you should always be looking to make sure that you're moving with where your customers want you to move, and that you are helping them in the areas where they trust you to help them. That's how you'll stay relevant. That's how you'll stay in business.
Great. And I have another question around relationships, or looking at cause and effect chain. So the question is really, is there subjective bias involved in what you think might be crucial for your business or customer? So how do you deal with this dilemma?
Could you repeat the question? I heard objective bias, but I didn't hear a couple of the other key elements.
The objective bias involved, what you think might be crucial for your business or customer. So how do you deal with this dilemma?
That's definitely a good thing to be aware of, and I think one way to get around it is to involve people early on and throughout the process from outside of your core part of the organization. Get some external perspectives, especially if it's not something that's top secret. If you're working in a government context, or something that's key differentiator for your business, where you can reach outside, or find a way to obfuscate things so that you can. But get other people's perspectives, maybe even involve people throughout your design thinking process if you're using a process like that. But get external perspectives.
Okay, great. We're getting a lot of questions, so I'm going to keep moving. We have one on when do we prioritize going after with a problem? Under what conditions should we not?
When should you prioritize and when shouldn't you? Is that?
Yes.
Well, I think that no matter how clearly you think that you see the problem, I think you should always challenge yourself to make sure that you're seeing it in the right way. So I think that means that you're going to open things up and look at other potential problems to solve, or slight variations on that problem to solve, or challenging people to think really differently, and then see if it links back. And that'll give you something to prioritize. So I think ideally you should assume that you don't know for sure, even if you think you do, and to flip things around and almost push yourself as far away from where you think that you want to be solving the problem, and think of as many wild and crazy and distant things, and then try to pull them back, or maybe even look at those distant things and try to identify what's common with them, and then try to pull it back. And so I would challenge you to always try to prioritize something, and push yourself beyond what you think is the obvious answer.
Okay, great. We have so many questions. So I'm going to try to summarize two. We have from Antonio and Patrick, and looking at in terms of the design thinking process that you explained. Is that truly adaptable to today's world, post-COVID or moving forward? And what elements are most adaptable? Have some questions around framing, reframing.
Sure. So if we look at the design thinking process, it's a simple 5-step process, and the first step is empathize, which is really you're trying to link back to the human-centered part of the problem, and really dig into those human elements around, and it's all about research. The definition part is where you really try to drill down and prioritize and choose and refine how you state the problem, so that you have a problem clearly stated, a problem well stated, to go into your ideation, and then your prototyping, your testing. I wouldn't get super hung up on all of the details of a design thinking process, but I think that it's important to always consider the human elements, and to always focus on the problem before you focus on the solution. A lot of times people jump right into ideate, and I think that that's a mistake. And that's part of the reason that our group exists at Oracle Fuel, is that oftentimes what the customer thinks is the problem, and what we might think is the problem, as you dig in and you start working with the human elements, you may find that you're solving the wrong problem, and that doesn't help anybody. And so diving into those human elements, oftentimes you shift the problem that you're solving, because you find out that there are other things that matter more than what you thought mattered the most. And it allows you to shift those things before you spend a lot of money. And so I think that the design thinking process does a good job of laying out very simply how to involve the humans in your problem solving.
And I have a lot of thank yous and appreciations for your thoughts and perspectives. And then we have a question on, do you think your method is good to keep the speed in practice before it's a must?
To keep this,
So,
what was the last part?
let me give you the preface. So it's important to keep the innovation speed faster than change in the business environment, that your organization is prepared for the future. And with agility, it refers back to the next question, what we're experiencing right now. Do you think that your method is good for keeping the speed in practice before
Sure.
it's a must have?
Sure. So I would challenge the notion that speed is the most important thing in innovation. Getting the solution right is the most important thing. So if you look at almost any innovation, it takes 20 to 30 years for any technological innovation to hit that wide adoption point where it starts to go across a large number of people. So if you look at the VCR, if you look at the MP3 player, if you look at the something like Gorilla Glass took 50 years for them to find the right application post-invention. So from the time you invent the first thing to the time something starts hitting that wide adoption, it's a long process. So you want to get it right. And people point to Apple a lot, and most of the time Apple's not first. So it's important to make sure that you're solving the problem correctly. And that usually means getting the human elements right. And a lot of the times that Apple wins in a space where they're not first, it's because they got those human elements correct.
Great. And we have a question related to your role at Oracle. Does Oracle have intellectual stock options or any other reward system which drives innovation?
So they do help with patents and things like that. And the most of the way that they drive innovation is around intellectual curiosity and collaboration. And so our group works with customers to help them reimagine their business and prospective customers. But within the organization, I have several friends that work in development, things like that, and they help with the patents, and they help with connecting people and things like that to empower innovation. But we're really pushed on by the fact that we have the opportunity to help people drive their business and their mission critical systems, and trying to make those as useful as possible and as interconnected as possible.
Great. Okay, I think we'll try to squeeze one more question. We only have 2 minutes to go. There's one final question on whether your method would be adaptable to a complex challenge, such as climate change.
Wow, that's a tough question. So what I would say is that as you look at something super complex, it's going to be more than one problem that you're trying to solve. So you have a big problem, then you have sub problems. So obviously the climate changing, if we just keep it really rough, is a big problem that we're trying to solve. But then there's lots of different problems that would help with climate change. So if we look at, how can we make our transportation system more efficient? How can we make our creation of products and services more efficient? So if you look at something like clothing, we have a huge problem in clothing because people, with all the fast fashion and things like that, clothes have become very disposable where they used to be more durable. And it's a mindset problem. It's a manufacturing problem. So there's a number of different ways that you could address climate change. So it becomes multiple problems. So your first problem to solve is finding all of the problems to solve, and then prioritizing the ones that you think that you can address, and assigning, getting groups of people tasked on those.
Wonderful. Thanks for the great questions from our audience, from Karina, from Thomas, from Antonio, Ajit, Lokesh, Patrick, Santosh, Walter. We have many questions, Tadia. And most of all, thanks for your wonderful insights, Braden, and to inspire us to tackle greater challenges and problems. So thank you again.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks again for the technical issues, me getting on a little bit late. And thanks for everybody who came. I really appreciate it. You've got all my contact details on Twitter. I'm at Innovate, and happy to continue the conversation and keep innovating.
you.